I'm going to start the recording when we go on YouTube. Redirecting you to YouTube. Okay. Okay, and we are live. Welcome everyone to a new episode of the Jewish Women Entrepreneurs and Leaders podcast. Today, I am really excited. First of all, this is our first episode after the summer. We're going to start the recording when we go on YouTube. Redirecting you to YouTube. I'm sorry about that. Let me stop the sound. Okay. So it's saying that this is our first episode after the summer. So I'm very excited that we're restarting the season of the podcast episode. And I'm very happy to have you, Robynne, on this first episode after the summer. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be starting the new year, the Jewish New Year, and the French School New Year, I guess, also too, with you. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm very excited. So first, before we start, I want to tell more about Robynne and tell you more about Robynne. And this is not your typical bio. This is me tweaking the bio to take things that are interesting for our listeners because we want to really get to the meat of things. So first of all, Robynne lives today in Paris. So she's talking to you from Paris. It just happens that I'm also in France. So we're both in France. But Robynne is originally from Philadelphia. She moved to Paris 36 years ago from the US. And today, Robynne is an ADHD coach for adults. And we're going to talk more about that. But before she became an ADHD coach, she has had a unique and interesting journey before she finally found what she was born to do. She began her career as a child psychology after graduating from Tufts University in the US. And then when she moved to Paris, she became a professional organizer and founded the first English-speaking professional organizing company in Paris 20 years ago. Her work with neurodivergent clients and being the wife and the mother of ADHDers, I don't know how we say that, but people with ADHD, she was inspired to transition into ADHD coaching. I'm going to talk about that too. And then she went back to school and she became ICF-accredited. Today, she draws on her professional expertise and personal experience to support adults who have ADHD and their partners, we're going to talk about that too, in creating lives that fit their unique brains. I personally met Robynne 3 years ago when she joined the Global Network for Jewish Women Entrepreneurs and Leaders through Karen. We say hi to Karen. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. And then we meet every time I go to Paris to the local chapter. We just met last week. We had the great honor and pleasure to give a big hug and to meet in person, not only through Zoom. And then she became my coaching client in January 2025. And I love seeing how her business is growing with more clients, but also clearer processes and more structure in her business. And that's why I'm so excited to have her, because there's so many topics that we want to talk about in this podcast. So we're going to talk about Jewish identity. We're going to talk about Jewish roots. We're going to talk about how do we choose the business that we're born to do, how it is to be Jewish in France today and have a business. And at the end, I have a few questions for you. We're going to start a new way of ending our podcast episodes, but this is a surprise that I will leave for the end. So let's dive in, Robynne. Are you ready?
Ready?
Yeah, so I want to start from the beginning, actually. I want to start from your Jewish upbringing. So you were born in Philadelphia, I'm guessing, at least in the US, and then you were raised as, as Jew, I guess, as a Jew. And I would love to hear from you. How was it? What was your Jewish upbringing, and how was it to be born at that time in the US as a Jew?
So I would say that my the environment that I was growing up in was rather homogeneous and mostly surrounded by Jewish families. And I didn't think about that at the time, but it happens to be the case. And the community was mostly Reform. The people, in any case, that we surrounded ourselves with for reform. I went to Hebrew school. I got confirmed. I felt like that I did maybe more than the average person of my age. But I wasn't doing it because my parents were forcing me. I was actually doing it because I really enjoyed it, and that part of my identity of being Jewish was very important to me. I remember feeling that at the time. It's not just looking back on it. So that's something
Wow.
that I carried with me from the time. And we celebrated all of the holidays, not in a very practicing or religious way, but in a very traditional, homey, Hamish way, I'd say.
Right, right. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, because when you grow up in a certain environment, you're not necessarily aware of your identity. You're like, okay, my parents are Jewish, I'm Jewish, I'll just do whatever I'm told. But you're saying here that there was like a really a special place for you for this identity. Like you cherished your Jewish identity. It wasn't just like my parents told me to, there was something more there. So that's really interesting. And then you go to college, and then we just said that you moved 36 years ago from the U.S. to France. So what happened? How does a Philly girl end up in Paris?
Well, actually, so I met my then boyfriend, now husband, on a beach in Mexico.
Okay.
When I think that was the winter vacation of my sophomore year. So,
Okay.
he seemed very exotic. He was not Jewish. He is not Jewish. Um, and he was French and a, professional golf player. And it was all like very, very exotic. Again, coming from a very different background. And then I did my semester abroad, and we kind of built up a relationship, and then I decided at the end of college to actually, 1 week later after I graduated, to actually move over to France.
Wow.
It seemed like the logical choice because he was a professional, again, a golf professional on the European tour, so it wasn't like he could do what he was doing professionally over in the United States yet. So it just
Right.
felt very, very natural to me to to move over to France. So that's how I ended up here.
Wow. Wow. So you actually, this is like a bold move right after your graduation. You're like, yes, I'm going for love. This is it. This is my life, right? This is like a bold move. How old are you at this time?
Oh gosh, I was 21.
Wow.
I don't remember thinking it was bold. I remember my entourage and my parents' friends thinking that it was bold. But I think I
I'm
was just in
sure.
love, I was just in love and just
Right.
thinking, I'm going to try this. And if it doesn't work, I go back home.
Right.
I really was not, and that's
Right.
kind of my personality, just not thinking things through too much and making myself crazy.
Wow. Amazing. And was that the first time that you ended up in Paris, or had you come? Because I know Americans don't necessarily travel a lot to Europe. So is it something that you had visited before Paris, or was it your first time?
So I had gone my junior year for a semester. I had lived in Paris.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you had
So
that experience of 6 months. Oh, okay. So you weren't like completely unknown. You had this whole
yeah.
semester experience, and I guess you liked it. You liked living in France.
Of
It
course.
was
And
something
I
that
spoke the
you.
language. I spoke the language already as well. I started in sixth grade and I spoke the language. So I felt relatively comfortable.
Okay, okay. So you get to Paris 36 years ago, come from love, you get married, you have your kids. And what I'm interested in here is how is that Jewish identity either growing with you while you're in France, or are you putting it on the side, or is it something so obvious that, yeah, I know I'm Jewish, but it's okay, I don't have to. Like, how does this relationship with your Jewish identity evolves with the years?
Well, that's a great question. I don't know if I really thought about it in that way, but now that I'm thinking about it, when I did have children, I think that that changed a lot in the sense that I felt this pull and this desire and motivation to transmit my religion to my children. And my husband was and still is very supportive of the Jewish religion. And so he was just like, yeah, well, we'll raise the kids in both religions. And he didn't really do much. It didn't really mean much to him. So their upbringing was very much like my own upbringing in terms of, the good foods and the holidays and going to synagogue when we went back to the United States to see my parents. So it was very attached to family, and food.
Right.
Um, at the same time, I associated my Judaism very much with America, and I didn't relate to the scene, let's just say, of how Judaism was practiced, which is more conservative or more traditional. Most of the Jews here in France are they keep kosher, and a lot of them are Sephardic. So it just felt very different to me, and not something that I could particularly relate to. So there wasn't a lot of connection between myself and my children and my family and the Jewish community at large in Paris.
Wow, this is a fascinating conversation because, I'm, one of my passion is understanding what does it mean to be Jewish and what is Jewish identity. And from my experience, every time I speak to, people around me, the two answers that I have when we speak about Jewish identity is either regarding religion, which is, keeping kosher, doing Shabbat, going to shul, which is not necessarily related to Jewish identity. I mean, it could be, but not necessarily. Or
Right.
the other answer is the connection with Israel, right? With the
Mm.
state of Israel, with a home, with the land. And here in your case, I hear a lot with the connection with, with the more the religion. And it's true that in France, you have basically, to really put it really boldly, you have either the religious people or you have the assimilated people, like the maybe a little bit of reform. But it's true that how do you, and this is a question that maybe you have the answer, maybe you don't, but how do you continue to nurture that Jewish identity when you're not religious, in a place where the only option is going to synagogue or eating kosher? But if you do want to nurture, you said that you felt that urge when your kids were born, or when you became a mom. So how do you communicate, how do you transmit that Jewish identity if it's not through the rituals, the religious rituals, or things that are pretty obvious? How do you do that?
Well, first of all, the religious element came going to synagogue was when we would go back to Florida and we would be with
Right,
my parents. Okay. So
right,
that was, I felt like I had that down in the United
right.
States. And then I just made a point of celebrating in our own way, of celebrating as a family or with other, Jewish families, which, Jewish English speaking families, not many of those around, but in any case, to celebrate the holidays, again, just in a fun way. And now, fast forward that now that my kids are out of the house, I not only with the Jewish chapter of your global network, we've created a sisterhood. So, there's that connection there with Judaism, and everything feels very safe and very organic, and just, to express myself in that way. But I also created a group that we call Schwesters. For those of you who don't know, it's the Yiddish word, I think, right, Natalie? It's the Yiddish word for sisters, right?
Yes,
So,
yes.
yes. So these are our other American Jews who are living here and who are married to Frenchmen. So we have very much the same profile. Some of them Frenchmen are not Jewish. Some of them, not all of them are French, but in any case, it's like was our way of, we get together for the holidays sometimes, and it's just we just feel like we want to do Jewish or Jewishy things together. So that's kind of how I keep it up in any case.
I love it. I love it because basically you're giving me a great transition to the global network, because one of the reasons why this global network is, first of all, I started this global network. One of the reasons why I started it, and why it's so dear to my heart that there are local chapters all around the world. Today we have six, hopefully we'll have more. It's exactly for what you said. It's having that space, that place, those people that you can talk to, that you can be yourself, that you can express your Jewish identity without having to go to the synagogue, eating kosher. Like, you can do all that, of course, if that makes you happy, of course. But it's really that space where, as a human being, you can express your Jewish identity as a person, as a woman, and with the global network, also as an entrepreneur. And we'll talk about that. But that's what I wanted. That was my next question: was how did joining the global network help you, reconnect or connect more or deepen that sense of Jewish identity for you, being in France, and, connecting to your Jewish identity more when you go back to the US. But when you're in France, how is the global network helping you connect or reconnect or connect deeper with that Jewish part of your identity?
Well, if are we talking about the monthly Zooms that we do with the global network as opposed to the Paris chapter?
No, we're talking about the whole thing. We're talking about the fact that you're joining a sisterhood, like you said,
Right.
that includes the Zoom, the global Zoom, that includes the local chapters, like this whole, like when
No, the whole
you
thing.
decided to join, and again, we're saying thank you to Karen. She's the one who talked to you about this and brought you it. So when you heard about this, like how since you've joined, how do you see that you're Jewish, that this part of your identity, this Jewish part of your identity has evolved? Is it helping you keep that more alive? Like I'm trying to see like, how is that helping you connect or reconnect with that part of your identity?
Well, I think that, unconsciously, I think that I embraced it for that reason. I mean, it sounds like it's a very small, specific group, by saying, okay, you take all the Jews, and then you take all the Jews who are women, and then you take all the Jews who are women and entrepreneurs. It's like it keeps getting smaller and more, like in French you say pointu. But
Right.
I feel it's like you found, I don't want to say you found your people, because I've got other groups of people, but it just was a comfort level that I realized that environment was missing in my life. I realized that after the fact. So it wasn't like I sought it out, but all of a sudden I was like, oh, this is what it can be about, you know? And it just has opened up, it's opened up my heart, I want to say, more than anything else. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. I feel like I have
Thank
tears
you,
in my eyes.
Natalie. Thank you,
No, it's
Natalie.
not me. It's not me. It's the
It's all of
sisterhood. It's what
us.
we've
Yeah.
built together.
Yeah.
It's your meetings. I mean, last week I was sitting in Paris with you and the girls, and I was so moved because, and I think you were the one saying, I was like, oh wow, it's amazing. You're like, well, you're the one who created that, right? And I was like, oh no, I didn't do it. It was the input, right? It was the starting. But then what is happening today is all you, it's all Karen, it's all the girls and all the chapters, I'm moved because I see how women know how to grab something when they feel it's the right thing and make it into something beautiful. So this is all on us. It's all on the
Us.
sisterhood. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. To talk about something that's less, I would say, that will less bring a smile on our face, is the challenge of being Jewish today in France. With everything that's happening, we try not to talk about politics, even though sometimes we have to, but there are a lot of things happening, from the French president, all those declarations and everything that we see in the news. And I know for a fact, for having family here, for being here, that it's not easy to be Jewish in France right now, especially because of that connection with what Israel is doing on the political scene. But I think, like everyone is saying, that it's really just an excuse to just have old anti-Semitism come back and just call it in a different name. And I know that you and I spoke about how it affected you professionally. Not only, I would love to hear, how it affects you as a person, first being Jewish in France, but I know that it also affects also on a business level. So how is it for you being today a Jewish woman first, and then a Jewish entrepreneur in France in this context?
I would say that the two are connected. The two stories are connected, which is not surprising. But when I arrived in France, I remember very distinctly that some of my parents' friends were sending me emails. There was only email at the time, so it was 35 years ago, and they were sending me emails about anti-Semitic incidents in France. And I was a little bit taken aback, because I was like, this is a great place where I live. And no, I have never been a victim of anti-Semitism at any point in time. Okay. Now, fast forward 35 years later, I'm feeling a little bit different. I'm feeling a little bit less comfortable. I do have to say that, especially post October 7th, feeling even more discomfort about, just not even just walking down the street, but just the whole, environment here in France. It's funny because my husband says to me, he says, "But Robynne, you don't look Jewish." And I feel like it's written all over my face, right? And he says to me, "No, because most of the Jews in France are Sephardic Jews, and they have very dark skin, and they're all kind of dressed a certain way and come across a certain way, and in this very like stereotypish way. And so he says, if you're walking down the street, I don't think that somebody's going to identify you as Jewish. And there was a part of me that was like, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Right.
Yeah. And so I think that was when, just like a lot of other people and a lot of other Americans in the diaspora, started to question our identity and what does it mean to be Jewish? Do I want to hide my Judaism now, especially post October 7th? How do I want to share it, I guess? And so I had a lot of conversations with Karen and the girls in our Paris chapter, and with you as well too, and just trying to understand moving forward. I don't know, it's not even understand, just trying to wrap my head around it. And I have been I don't know if low key is the word. Like, I haven't felt that I could express my Judaism or be unabashedly Jewish, which I kind of admire, when some people do that. And I have to say that today is my coming out because no, it's true. And I do feel that, and you were the one who told me this. I don't need to shout it at the rooftops, on the rooftops, but I also don't want to shrink. And I don't want to be I don't want my identity to be less important, or I don't want to feel any kind of shame about my Jewish identity. So today I do feel like is a turning point in as well. I knew that, that this was going to come up in our podcast, and I was just kind of sitting with it, like, how do I feel about that? I did experience with one of my coaching clients recently a moment where she's not Jewish, and it seemed like that she was trying to figure out what my political views were and or what my religion was, maybe to decide if she wanted to work with me or not. I don't know. But what came out of that conversation was that I felt that it was very sad that we even needed to be having the conversation. Like, why is that even a part of any conversation? And this is what I think part of the magic is with being with other people who are Jewish, is not necessarily to close ourselves off and only be with Jewish people, but it does allow that safe space to be an entrepreneur, to share, just to share. So that's one of the reasons also too why I'm grateful for that space, because again, I just feel like in France, I feel like it's closing in on me a little bit, so yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for if this is your coming out. So I would say thank you for choosing to be vulnerable, and also being very specific about what you feel and not going into one extreme or the other. I always feel like the extremes are, so I'm going to come out and I'm going to, scream on social media, or I'm going to hide and I'm going to not. I think that both extremes are not healthy. And I think that we're all trying to find our ways into that, sometimes feeling uncomfortable. And I think the more people are going to share how uncomfortable it is for us to talk about that or to be Jewish. I don't have my Jewish start here, but since I've been in France for a few weeks now, I've been thinking twice before wearing it. And sometimes I'm like, I don't care, I'll wear it, and whoever says anything, blah, blah, blah. And sometimes like, no, I just want to have a quiet day. I don't want to have to, so I think we all have those questions, and whoever says no, I think it's something that we have an internal conversation about. And I think what about your husband said, I think it's really interesting, because whether we look Jewish or not, we feel Jewish. And this is the mindset that we're in, and we know we are. And that's when it happens. Actually, that's because that's what we feel. That's the energy we're projecting. But I agree with you. It is so sad that we are having those conversations. And I'm really, I don't remember now where I was 35 years ago. I was in France. Yes, I was in France. Wasn't in Israel, but it's amazing in a bad way that you were already receiving those emails, and that it's not something that just happened now. So I'm happy that we have that safe space so that we can at least talk about it, and we can at least, exchange and know, oh, okay, I'm not crazy. Oh, okay, you also feel that. Oh, okay, how do I deal with this coaching client? And by the way, it raises ethical questions that are much bigger than Jewish, not Jewish, around coaching. Like, how much can you go ask questions about your coach, and what difference does it make, and why does it have to matter anyway? So I think that those are important questions that we need to ask ourselves. And thank you for sharing that. I think it's important. And talking about your business, I want to talk now about the other bold decision that you made after deciding to move to France, which is your professional journey. How you decided at different points in your professional journey to change directions. And I think that the most obvious one, I'm sure there were more, but the most obvious one was when you moved or transitioned from being a personal organizer to being an ADHD coach. I would love to hear from you. How did that happen? What was the transition? What was your intuition? How did you manage that? Can you share more about that?
Sure. Just to come back to the word bold, because you said it was bold. I don't feel like it was
Yes.
bold. It felt like it didn't feel like a change in any way. It felt like a very, very natural transition, which I'll tell you about in a minute. So
Okay.
basically, starting about 20 years ago when I started my business as a professional organizer, I, developed within a couple of years the tips and the tricks and the hacks and just things that work to help people get organized. And I soon realized that there was a group of people that related to their time management, that related to their stuff, that related to their paperwork, that related to their emotions differently. And I didn't understand why. And it seemed like the more people I met and the more people I worked with, the more people had this profile. And I literally could not put my finger on it until one day I met this entrepreneur and I went into his office. He told me that he had ADHD, okay, and that he was taking medication. Now, at that time, this was 15 years ago in France, nobody was speaking about ADHD for adults. The medication had just come onto the market for adults, but it was just people were just talking about it in relation to kids bouncing off the walls, hyperactive kids. Okay. So anyway, so this man, I went into his office and everything was horizontal, laid out everywhere, just out. Nothing was put away. And I said to him, I asked him, why? I was so curious. And he said, if I put something away, then it just disappears, out of sight, out of mind. So that was my first clue that something was different. And then he said to me, he showed me these two pieces of paper that he'd received that morning in the mailbox for his business. And one of the pieces of paper was just pure advertising for ink cartridges. And the other piece of paper was from the tax office saying that he was already late in paying his taxes. And if he didn't pay the 20,000 euros that he owed immediately, that they were going to shut his business down.
Wow.
And he said to me, show me these two pieces of paper. I kid you not. And he said, I look at these two pieces of paper and I don't know which is important. I don't know which is a priority. I don't know what to do. And it creates so much stress and so much overwhelm that I just shut down and I put the pieces of paper away back in a pile.
Wow.
So this may seem like an extreme case, and because ADHD is on a spectrum, just like the autism spectrum. So yes, this is definitely one end of the spectrum, but there are things that are similar to other people with ADHD. In any case, once he opened up that door and I started reading about ADHD, I turned to my husband and I said, I think you have ADHD. I mean, this was a long time ago, he's come a long way, but he was very kind of macho about it. My brain's not broken, kind of thing. Okay, fine. So I just parked that idea. And then the more that I got to know people and the more that I worked with people through the organizing, and I started talking about ADHD and they started getting diagnosed, not thanks to me, I don't diagnose, but just talking about it, just creating the awareness, I guess, was really important for me at the time, and supporting these people and accompanying them. So fast forward to 5 years ago when my daughter was getting ready to go off to college in the States. And I'm not going to go into detail because it's really not an interesting story, but whatever it was, I realized that I thought that she had ADHD, and I got her evaluated, and she did. And her ADHD, which is often the case, looked very different from my husband's ADHD. Okay. Often it's very different between men and women or girls and boys. In any case, she gets officially diagnosed. She goes off to college, and she started working with an ADHD coach in the academic center. Okay. And she's starting to tell me about it, and she's so excited, and this is so helpful. And as she's telling me about it, I'm thinking, this is totally something that I could do. And then my next thought was, I already do it. I do this with my
Wow.
husband. I do this with my daughter. I do this with my clients. So it intrigued me enough to say, can I put like a framework around this? And then I went back to school online. This was COVID. And late at
Right.
night with an American program, and went through all of the training, and it took me about a year and a half, and it just felt like everything fell into place. I mean, I just realized that coaching people and accompanying them and asking them questions and helping them to connect the dots, and also educating them partly about their ADHD, it just all made complete sense to me, and the pieces of the puzzle just all came together, and that's where I'm at
Wow.
now. Yeah.
I love it because you're right. I mean, from the outside, it looks like a bold move, when you say, I went from being a personal organizer to becoming an ADHD coach. It's like, wow, this is a huge decision. But really, the stories, because I'm also, fascinated with the Born to Do, with how do we discover our mission? How do we discover what we were born to do? How do we, and I always say it's not really a discovery, it's more like an unveiling. It's like something that, when it happens, it's obvious. Doesn't take a big effort, or it's not a big decision, because it's just something that flows and just is aligned and just feels so natural that this is who you always were. And funny enough, I mean, I don't know if it's funny, but interestingly enough, people are very close to what they're born to do, but they go and look for different things because they need to prove themselves and they need to get validation. And then, when they start looking and start looking inside, they're like, oh, so it was there all along. It was always there. I've always been that, and I've always done that. Now I need to put the right title, the right box, the right framework, but it was always there all along. So I love that story. For someone who has met you, I think that 3 years ago, you were maybe by the end of the transition, but you were still like not completely saying that you were an ADHD coach. And I've seen how you introduced yourself in our monthly networking meetups. I've seen the evolution of the presentations, and I feel now that you're so comfortable, so yourself, so at ease with, not that you were not before, but before it was like, I have two hats, I do this and I do that, right? There was this, and now it's completely fluid, and it's really who you are. So I love seeing that. And of course, working with you closely on your business, I love, seeing how you evolve and how you're structuring. So that was my next and last question before we start with the questions to the end. Was you started a coaching process with me since January, and I wanted to hear from you. What has this changed in your work? You were already an entrepreneur, you already had clients, you were already making money. It wasn't like, you were not launching your business, but I wanted to hear in your own words how working with a coach, but and with me, how is that has that changed something in your business from your point of view?
Well, it not only changed something in my business, but obviously it comes from me, before it changes in my business. And so I loved the approach. And this was also me that chose this. I mean, because address lots of different things, but I chose mostly in the beginning to address the mindset. And
Right.
it's true that because I was in that kind of transition period, how am I presenting myself? How do I want to show up? Where am I going, with this? What do I want to really embrace? Um, the process of working with you really helped me a lot to wrap my head around it, not feel like I'm an imposter, and just to feel like that this is what I was born to do, to really kind of settle into that. And so that was important for me. Also, I had no business background, economics, nothing, zero, zero, zero. And I think when I realized when I was going to start this ADHD coaching that it was almost like my last chapter. Okay. I'm 57 years
Okay.
old. This is going to be my job until I retire, past retirement age, whatever. This is it, right? And so I felt
Right.
like that I wanted to put all the chances on my side from a business point of view that I had not done with my professional organizing business. And so I realized this is now or never for me to invest in myself, to invest in my business, and to be accompanied by a business coach that is going to give me these tools that I don't know about. I mean, from the simplest things, about how you make money, how you structure your business, how you use the technological tools that are available to us now, which is amazing, to not be negligent about that and to embrace those things. So all of that's been a huge learning curve for me, and I'm very grateful of our work together because you also put me at ease and don't make me feel. You never made me feel at any point that you never made me feel little because I didn't know something, I guess. So my own hangups about not knowing about how to run a business or how to approach business in general, I'm able to put that aside and just kind of get to work with you.
Wow, I love that. I love that, and I see again and again. And I know it sounds, it sounds cliche, but it's so true that I see people are ready to invest in themselves when they know it's the right thing.
Mm.
When they know, like there's a reason why you did not invest. When you were a personal organizer, because you didn't have that intuition. It was good, you were doing it, it was nice, you were making money, but it wasn't like something that you wanted to really invest in, and unconsciously you didn't even know about it. But then, when people hesitate, for example, to work with me or even to invest in their business working with someone else, I'm always saying to them, check if you're in the right direction, because as long as you're not sure that you're in the right direction, you're not going to invest. But not because it's not the right coach or not the right, it's because you don't feel like this is it. When you feel that this is it, then you are ready to invest, because you know the return on investment is going to be priceless. So thank
Let's
you for
not,
sharing that.
yeah, and let's not forget that because I am a coach, I think that that made it much easier for me because I was familiar with the process. And so I think that that created alignment, between the two of us also too. And so I was walking the walk and talking the talk of, how I show up as a coach as well too. So I think that that also
Definitely.
has been helpful in the process. Well,
Oh, definitely. And I think that, and I told you that when we had our feedback session, I told you that with you, the mindset shifts went much faster than what I have to go through with other clients that are less familiar with the coaching process. Being familiar with the coaching process is knowing that we have limiting beliefs, knowing that we have to shift our mindset before. So there's like almost 50% of the knowledge or the awareness that is done, and then you have to do the work. Of course you have to shift the mindset, but at least there's a mindset to be shifted, right? So it's so I agree with you, and I love working with you, that. So so grateful to have you as a client as well. Great, so we're getting to the end of this podcast, but I'm going to start something new. And by the way, feel free to comment and give me feedback, because I've seen that on other podcasts, and I've always said, oh, that's a great idea, I should do it too on my podcast. So here we go. Those are our questions at the end. We have 5. We said we're going spontaneous. So the game, well, it's not a game, but it's the idea is that you answer whatever comes to mind. Like, you don't have to think about it. It has to be natural and spontaneous. Okay. And if you don't know, you don't know. No one is going to, if you don't have an answer. So the first question is for you: what does it mean for you to be a Jewish woman?
I
Yeah,
feel I feel like I answered that already.
it is.
I feel like I answered that already.
Yes, you did. We can pass, but it's only
Okay.
if there's something. It is a difficult question, but it's only if something comes up. What is your favorite word in Hebrew or Yiddish?
Bell. Do I
What is
need to
it? I didn't
explain
hear.
it? Bell.
Kvel, is that complaining? No, kvetch. No, what's
That's
kvel?
kvetch. Kvel, it
Right.
means it's when you're filled with pride.
Oh, kvel, right. Okay, that's your favorite word. Okay, very good. What is your favorite Jewish holiday?
Passover. It's all about family and the matzo ball soup.
Okay. Who is the Jewish woman that inspires you the most? And it could be someone from the Bible, from history, from now, what, it could be whoever you want.
So I right away spontaneously Simone Weil comes to mind,
Oh,
and she was a French activist. And if anybody can watch a movie about her, amazing documentary that was done, and she's a very inspiring woman.
a very inspiring woman. There's also a theater play and there's a book, and I love also totally bowed down to this
Yes.
woman. Uh, what is your blessing for the Jewish people for the new year?
Oh, we talked about that last week in our global Zoom. Um, I, I think what I said is that what I hope for is that we can all continue to come to the safe space and kind of come together and join forces. And I guess it's just to be safe with each other.
Yeah, love that. Love that. And I would just add to that I think the beauty of our global network is that we have women coming from all different kinds of backgrounds and all different kinds of religious level. You speak about the ADHD spectrum, there's also the religious spectrum, and we have women, that are covering their hair, and women that only know they're Jewish and nothing else. And I think that this should be an example of what the Jewish people, should be in Israel and around the world, just connecting and uniting as Jewish women and as Jewish people in Israel and around the world.
So just to rebound off of that, I was apprehensive in the beginning because on the Zooms before we would go in the breakout room, just my very first Zooms, I was thinking not that I was judging people who were religious or Orthodox, but I was thinking that they were judging me. And I realized that the more breakout rooms I was in and the more women that I would meet, and then eventually I'm working with one or two of them, I realized that they're coming from a place of open-mindedness, and that we are all Jewish. So that just kind of put everything at ease for me, and just like we're all on the same footing, and we're all here together, and we're all here just to support each other, I guess.
Exactly. And if we could only, as women also show the example, so that by creating those sisterhoods, by connecting to each other, by letting go of our differences and focusing on what we do have in common, I really hope that this will be an example for the whole Jewish people. And that, of course, we want peace, and of course, we want the war to end, and we want the hostages and the soldiers to come home. But we also want unity in the Jewish people, and we want people to be able to connect with each other. That's what we want. So thank you so much, Robynne. Thank you for this
Yeah.
amazing episode that I'm sure a lot of people will enjoy. And that we spoke about so much about Jewish identity, about our born to do, about who we are as women, as Jewish women, as entrepreneurs. So thank you so much for sharing, being vulnerable, and being yourself. And I will see you, everyone, in our next episode of the Jewish Women Entrepreneurs Podcast. And if I don't speak to you, which is probably the case to everyone, I wish you Shana Tova, Happy New Year to everyone in Israel and around the world. And may we have a year better than the last one, I would say. Let's start with that.
Amen. Amen to that. And the Shana Tova to you and to everyone.
Thank you, Robynne. Bye, everyone.